At Żegota's urging, the Polish underground decreed a death sentence on blackmailers and denouncers, and published it along with their names in its newspapers and on posters.
A second very important issue was that of documents. Even for a regular Polish citizen, it was difficult to create forged documents. Where could you get them? You couldn't buy them in a store. One needed to know where and how to obtain them. And besides, some sources made good false documents, others poor ones, only to sell them and make some profit. The Żegota organization, however, had access to the best forgers. Among them were those of the Home Army, which had to prepare documents for their own intelligence workers who operated throughout Germany, using these documents to carry out various undercover operations. These forged documents had to be very good, and they were.
So for Żegota, there was a high level of paperwork activity involving files, records, and documents, aside from monetary help. All of this action was coordinated with the Home Army Legalization Office, which I believe was located on Kapuścińska.
While most Polish birth certificates were provided by priests, German documents were forged by underground specialists.
Żegota itself manufactured about 50,000 documents and distributed even more because it also distributed documents prepared by other underground organizations. From my own experience and from my meetings with people who were helped and with whom I still have contact today, people who were under my care, I have to say that Żegota might have been their last hope of rescue. They received documents and money, but not only that. More important was the feeling of moral support that they got. The awareness that there existed a group of people who were trying to care for them, that they weren't so alone. Other Żegota efforts were directed at helping the children, placing them in Polish families, where they were brought up as part of the family, or placing them in orphanages, particularly orphanages associated with Catholic monasteries.
The convents directed by Sister Superior Matilda Geta were among the most active, sheltering more than 600 Jewish children. Mrs. IRENA SENDLEROWA, who was crippled in her service to Żegota.
The woman who reported me couldn't stand up to the beatings. She gave them my name. So the Germans learned that I belonged to an organization which helped Jews. The Germans beat me, tortured me, broke my feet and legs, and when they finished this, they condemned me to death. While this was happening, my Żegota colleagues did everything they could to free me, not only to help me personally, but also because I was the only one with coded information regarding 2,500 Jewish children who had been brought by Żegota to various hiding places, in monasteries as well as in private homes. And this file of information was hidden in my home. Thanks to fortunate circumstances, it never got into Nazi hands. My foster mother was a Żegota agent who worked with Mrs. Sendlerowa.
Mrs. Elżbieta Ficowska recalls her experiences as a former hidden child.
It was not planned at first that she would become my mother. She was a woman who was a midwife by profession. She worked out of her home on the east side of Warsaw. Thanks to the fact that this home was her property, she could issue birth certificates there, as well as forge papers and register people. I was brought to her when I was 5 months old. I was driven out of the ghetto in the back of a truck, inside a pile of bricks where I was concealed in a small wooden box with air holes. In that box, as a sleeping infant, I was driven to the Aryan side. I was taken to the home of this midwife, my mother-to-be as it turned out, who at that time had prepared a safe home for me with a poor servant woman who lived on the outskirts of Warsaw. My mother took exceptional care of these matters. She discovered that the woman had tuberculosis. She then insisted that I not be turned over to her. After thinking about the situation and the fact that she herself was a widow and that her own children were adults and on their own, she decided that she would be the one to take care of me.
The unfortunate part of this work was the fact that the actual help we provided was only a small drop in an ocean of need. That although hundreds of thousands needed help, realistically only 1 or 2% received it. Furthermore, quite often a Jew or even an entirely Polonized man of Jewish descent, after 3, 8, 10 months or a year of Żegota help, was finally caught on a street by the Gestapo agents and killed. And all that effort was in vain. I myself experienced such things and considered them everyday occurrences. We also encountered people's indifference and unfriendliness. They asked, "Why do it?" And if someone would ask me today, after all these years, how it was possible, I would say that a certain percentage of people in that society, in spite of the terrible conditions we all lived under, were able to risk their own and their families' lives, just to be equal to the task of living up to their own ethical and human requirements.
Too little was done. Much more could have been done. But in order to do it, goodwill was needed on both sides. First of all, many Poles wanted to help. They wanted but were afraid to. There is no antidote for fear. Of course, there were some who did not want to help. On the other hand, when we were going to the ghetto to pick up those children, there were terrible scenes happening. One mother wanted a child to leave while her father did not. The grandmother wanted, the mother did not. They were asking what was the guarantee. What kind of a guarantee could I give them? I could not even give them a guarantee that I would get past the sentry. I was escorting the children and infants past the sentry in a very secretive way. Great appreciation should be given to the building caretakers who were located between the ghetto and the area inside. Thanks to their courage, I was able to go through. But I always could have come across an anti-Semitic caretaker who could have killed me and the Jewish child too. I could not give a Jewish family any guarantee a child would live. In those cases, very often, I was not given a child, and I was left frustrated and often crying. The next day, when I went back to the building to try again to convince them, it was too late.
At the Warsaw Castle, we spoke with the president of the Academy of Sciences and former Home Army liaison with Żegota, Professor Alexander Geszto.
We had in this in our team some people who played an important role in the Żegota organization. I think about Władysław Bartoszewski, Henryk Woliński, and other people. Some of them died, some of them still are witnesses of this very, very important, morally important. And I think that precisely at this point, that it was for us a kind of civic duty, of course, to help and to inform the world about the catastrophe and the approaching catastrophe, and then about the Holocaust.
It was through Żegota that the Polish underground maintained contact with the Jewish underground, and the Poles informed the world about the genocide. Radio transmitters beamed the news to England. Underground publications were microfilmed and brought overland across Europe by couriers such as Jan Nowak, Jerzy Lersky, and Jan Karski. On December 10th, 1942, the Polish government in exile informed the United Nations The persecution of the Jewish minority now in progress in Poland constitutes a separate page of Polish martyrdom. Himmler's order that 1942 be the year of liquidation of at least 50% of Polish Jewry is being carried out with utter ruthlessness and a barbarity never before seen in world history. The messages were brought out from Poland, but they were ignored. The ghettos were destroyed. The trains continued to transport victims to the camps. The outside world did not come to the aid of the Jews.